there's radical change as well in the regard to how people are viewing Ukraine, especially Poland. And I'm delighted that Mary Dejevsky, who's foreign affairs columnist at The Independent, who I actually bumped into this week. It was lovely to have a chat with her. Mary, how are you doing?
Fine, thank you very much.
It was lovely to see you the other night.
Yeah, it was lovely to see you too.
Yeah, indeed. We got a nice photo taken together, actually. Tiny bit of a height difference, Mary. Tiny bit of a height difference there. But
a little bit, yes.
Well, the thing is that you're great in stature in many other ways. So there we are. Tell us about Poland no longer supplying weapons to Ukraine amid a grain row, a diplomatic dispute over Kyiv's grain exports. What's going on here?
Well, this is a very, very interesting story. In fact, one of the most interesting stories, in a way, since the Ukraine war began, because Poland has been a major cheerleader for Ukraine against Russia. It's been very enthusiastic in supplying both financial and military help, and it's received, as we know, a lot of Ukrainian refugees, and it's been very hospitable. Now, in the last couple of weeks, some of this has changed because Ukraine was trying to ship the grain that it can't send over the Black Sea as it used to. It's been trying to send it to third countries through Poland and also to sell it to Poland. And there's a problem here because this came up against the Polish farm lobby, who complained that the price of Ukrainian grain was undercutting their own. And Poland is in the throes of an election campaign. And so this has become a big election issue with the farm lobby. And but what's in a way surprising is that not only has it become an election issue, but the language being used by Polish politicians has been quite immoderate, to the point where President Zelenskyy has actually complained in quite loud tones about it, because Poland has said that, well, first of all, they don't want cut price of grain, but also that they're retaliating against this and halting sales and deliveries of weapons to Ukraine. And of course, this has gone down very, very badly. But it's also, it's so interesting because it's one of the first really big open splits between Poland and Ukraine, which had seemed to be very much on the same page in the whole of this over the last year and a half.
Yeah, I mean, this is a major shift, really, isn't it? How do you see it ending, or will anything transpire really before the Polish election, do you think?
Well, I think it'll certainly carry on into the Polish election, so we're talking 2-3 weeks here. After that, it may die down. Certainly the EU, I think, is trying to mediate in some way to reduce the tensions here and will maybe produce a solution. But I don't think anything is going to calm down until after the Polish election. It's too attractive an election issue for politicians in Poland.
This is interesting as well, just in terms of what's happening in the war, because a Ukrainian missile strike has hit the headquarters of Russia's Black Sea Fleet in Crimea. Footage on social media shows plumes of smoke over the building in Sevastopol. I mean, how significant do you see this move, Mary, and what's your assessment of how the war is going for both sides?
Well, I think it's very interesting how Ukraine has really, in the last few weeks, opened a new front, in a way, on Crimea. It's always targeted Crimea, it's tried, but it seems to have been having more success in recent weeks. And the British are certainly claiming that part of that is due to the longer-range missiles supplied by the British. And in fact, the French are claiming the same thing with similar missiles that they've supplied to Ukraine. It's hard to tell whether what was clearly a successful strike on the headquarters of the fleet in Sevastopol, whether that is more than symbolic, whether it will be a hit to Russian morale, whether it's caused major casualties or even any casualties at all. There are some rumours that the commander of the fleet was actually killed, but that's not been confirmed. But Ukraine has to be quite careful here because, on the one hand, this is obviously a very high-profile and successful strike at Ukraine, at Russia. On the other hand, that sort of high-profile strike, as with strikes on the Kerch Bridge, which is a similar sort of symbol, it rallies Russian opinion behind President Putin and behind the war effort. So the idea that it might sap Russian morale, it may actually do the reverse.
Absolutely. Mary, we actually chatted the other night about how you have such a diverse range of things that you write about and talk about as well. And I know you're an expert on Eastern Europe and Russia. You've spent a lot of time there, of course, as a correspondent over the years, and in America as well. But you wrote a fantastic article for The Spectator about 20-mile-an-hour limits in Wales, which is something a lot of our viewers and listeners are actually really care about. People who either drive into Wales or people who are there at the moment, these 20-mile-an-hour limits imposed by Mark Drakeford. Just give us a flavour of your thoughts on these.
Well, I have to say that when I drive my car, which I do quite rarely, in London, as opposed to using it to get out of London, even maybe to Wales, I have to admit to finding the 20-mile-an-hour limit very, very difficult to observe. I think it's only a matter of time before I join practically everybody who seems to have been given a ticket for driving at 23 miles an hour,
yeah.
24 miles an hour, and the sort of the fastidiousness with which this limit is being enforced. When you think of how many other rules just of the road are not being enforced, like cyclists stopping at red lights and that sort of thing. I just feel that there's quite a shared sense of indignation, both about the limit and about how it's being enforced. I have no objection to limits near schools, near hospitals. Those are the sort of limits that you have in most countries, most countries of the world. Including France, Germany, whatever. You have very strict limits there, and they're enforced. In many places, and that would probably include quite a few urban environments in Wales, as it includes central London, there's actually a natural speed limit in a way, because in many places you can't actually go anything like 20 miles an hour. But when you're presented with an open road at, say, 10 o'clock at night, or very early in the morning, and you're driving or you're being driven along at absolute snail's pace and being stopped at traffic lights or pelican crossings where there's nobody crossing. It's incredibly frustrating. And it also feels, I don't know whether this is going to change, but the most private cars are engineered for the speed limits as they used to be. So,
indeed,
30 miles an hour feels sort of natural in an urban environment. 20 miles an hour, you have to keep watching your speedometer to make sure that you're not going over just by a fraction. I think that takes attention off the road.
Mary, you mentioned cyclists there. I have a wonderful story you're going to love. So my friend Ryan is a cyclist, big cyclist. He wears the high vis, he's got the helmet and all the gear and everything. And he actually has a little camera that he puts on his helmet. I mean, I keep on going about it the whole time. I just think it's ludicrous. But anyway, he has seen lots of drivers with his camera, his little GoPro camera, going through, breaking the rules of the road. And he's got 5 or 6 of them. He's got the footage, sent it to the police, and these people have been fined as a result. But he got a fixed penalty notice through the post himself, because one of the bits of footage that he'd sent through of a driver behaving badly showed him as a cyclist going through a red light. So he got a £60 fine. that he was hoisted by his own petard there, which I found very amusing. He's a cyclist who works for the BBC somewhat aptly. So there we are. And Mary, I have now been told that we can actually show the photograph, if you're watching on talkTV, of us together and the slight height differential of us at that event the other night. Mary, it was a real pleasure to see you in person. Always a pleasure to interview you on the TV as well. So great, and thanks very much indeed, Mary Dejevsky, for that. Appreciate that.
Thank you too.
All the very best.